What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Today we are going to be tier ranking every single Game of Thrones battle. Now, what am I considering a battle? Pretty much just any fighting altercation between multiple people. That's pretty much it. So if it's a 1v1, it's not going to count. It has to have multiple people involved. It doesn't have to be a large battle. If it's a tiny thing with just a couple people, I put it on here as well. I might have missed like one or two tiny other battles, but nothing significant. I think I got all the major points here in this tier ranker, and I'm excited to do this. I really don't think there's that many bad battles in this show. They're all pretty good, so expect to see a lot of them higher up on the tier list. Just some criteria as to what I'm actually ranking them on. So I'm ranking them on obviously the entertainment value of them, the choreography, the directing, how like the shots look, just how it all looks and how it's put together, how it's edited. All that stuff is important. And also the story, like how important is this battle for the overall story, for the characters? Does it develop the characters? Does it have emotion to it? Pretty much anything you can say about any of these battles, I'm including within the criteria. So we're going to be going in chronological order, starting off with the first ever like major fighting skirmish within Game of Thrones, which was when Ned was leaving Littlefinger's brothel and he was confronted by Jaime Lannister and a couple other Lannister soldiers. And they had this little skirmish here where like basically Jaime wanted to know what the hell was going on with Cat and Tyrion, because of course Cat, you know, was bringing Tyrion to the Vale at this point. And so there was this really small skirmish, probably lasted about 2 minutes between them, especially the part where it was Jaime versus Ned sword fighting. I thought that was really cool. One of the best things about this little skirmish here is that it's one of the only times we actually get to see Jaime fighting. Like, we don't get to see Jaime fight that often in the show. And when I mean fight with his good hand, obviously, because he loses his hand pretty early on in the show. And then the rest of the show, whenever he fights, he's obviously not as good. But this is one of the only times we get to see him probably in his prime fighting. Obviously, we get to see him a little bit later as well, but this is like one of the only times where we really get to see him in his prime, and he's really great. The way he stabs that one guy that was with Ned in the eye, like that was just incredible. So honestly, for season 1, it's a pretty solid little battle. I'm not going to put it too high though. It's obviously not the best we've ever seen. It's obviously not like incredible, but what it does for the story is really huge, and what it does for a lot of the characters here like Jaime and Ned. So I think I'm going to put it in B. It was probably the first moment of Game of Thrones where I was really like, okay, yeah, this is a show that you know is probably going to be a really damn good show. Like, this is the first moment I really felt that way, and it made for one of the better episodes of season 1 as well. So I absolutely love that. And in that same episode, you had this little skirmish here with Tyrion and Cat on the road to the Vale. Now, this one was okay. It was cool getting to see Tyrion using that little shield, but it wasn't anything too special. I'm not going to put it high, so I'm just going to put it in C. C is like the average tier. It's like, okay, it's not really like the best thing ever, but it's also not bad either. The only things that I would say I have a lot of criticisms to say against would be anything I put in D. But if it's in C, it just means, yeah, it's fine. I don't really have a problem with it. It's just not, it's kind of just average, you know? Then we get the Battle of Blackwater. Easily one of the best battles in the show. This is just Game of Thrones at its best, where it's just insanely large scale battle sequences with, you know, characters you care about on both sides. And at this point in the show, I was rooting for Stannis. Like, I really was. I saw him charging King's Landing and I was like, this man is a leader. He is a fighter. He's a warrior. Like, I wanted to see him win, but at the same time you had Tyrion on the other side, and obviously I don't want to see Tyrion die. And then also, you know, you have people like Sansa and King's Landing. It's like, I don't want to see these characters die, but I also don't want to see Stannis or Davos die. So it's one of the best battles for that reason. And it starts off in such an explosive way with, you know, Bronn shooting the flaming arrow into the wildfire in the water, and it leads a trail up to Stannis's fleet and just blows a bunch of his ships to hell. It was one of the best moments in the show, one of the most just jaw-dropping moments ever. And the battle itself is really well directed, really well choreographed. I can't really say there's any moments of it where I felt like it was a bit off in terms of how it was directed. It's not the largest scale battle we've seen, but it's still close to it. I'm going to put it in S tier. I think it definitely deserves to have that S tier rating. it is definitely one of the best battles in the show. It's one of the best episodes in the show as well. I mean, the battle lasts the whole episode, so if you love the battle, you're gonna love the episode as well. They go hand in hand, and what it does for Tyrion's character and also for Joffrey's character in other ways is actually really, really great. Also, it does a lot of stuff for the Hound's character. All around, it is just one of the best battles. I've said that a million times already, but it's just can't be said enough. Also, the way it cuts between those scenes with Cersei, where she's, hiding with Sansa, those scenes are amazing as well. And it's not part of the battle per se, but it still does affect the battle, just having those scenes intercut with the actual action itself. And it's a very brutal battle as well. There's a lot of brutal kills that happen within it, so definitely deserves S tier. Next up, again, it's kind of hard to consider this a battle, but I wanted to include as much as I could here. And this is when Daenerys took over Astapor in season 3. And this is the first time we really get to see the dragons do a lot of damage. They did a little bit of damage in season 2 in the finale in the House of the Undying, but this is one of the best moments with the dragons. And it's cool to see them like this because they were smaller dragons at this point. Obviously, this is before they get really grown. So you get to see the tiny dragons, just absolutely just light fire to the entire place. And it's marvelous, to say the least. Like, it is absolutely marvelous. It's quick. It's not like really a battle, I guess, but some of them fight back and die and fail in the process. So I decided to include it, but I'm just going to put it in B tier because it doesn't obviously hold the same weight as some other battles do in this show. But again, it's kind of hard to even call it a battle. Like I said, I've included a lot of stuff in here, even if it's not, technically a battle. And up next, I have Jon Snow versus the Wildlings. Now, I guess it was Jon and Ygritte versus the Wildlings. This was in the Reigns of Castamere episode where they were, right outside of that little building that Bran and the others were hiding out in. And this was like, okay, it was nothing crazy. I'm not gonna throw it at anything high, but in terms of what it did with Jon's character against the Wildlings, I think that was pretty huge. So I don't think it was the greatest though. Like I said, I think in terms of how it was directed and such was just fine. Obviously the highlights of this episode was the actual Red Wedding itself, but this was still pretty good. I'm just going to put it in C. I don't necessarily think it was anything that great, but again, I wanted to include it, just include as much stuff as I could on this list. And next up we have Jon Snow and some of the other men of the Night's Watch raiding Craster's Keep against the Mutineers in season 4, and this had a couple of back and forths between some characters. You even had Bran warging into Hodor at one point to kill Locke, which was amazing. But in terms of just the other scenes, like I loved seeing Jon just getting to use his sword and actually have a lot of fighting scenes, because other than this one scene in season 3, you don't really get to see Jon use his sword that much in the first 3 seasons. So this is the first time you really got to see Jon just be a pure badass, and he really, really is a badass in these scenes. And the way he kills, I believe his name was Carl, so cool, such cool stuff. I'm gonna have to throw this, honestly. Oof, this is a tough one. Should I put this in A or B? It's close. I might just throw it in A, because it was honestly one of the best episodes for me personally. Like, I absolutely loved just how that whole scene was set up, how it was shot in the snow, and of course it was beyond the wall as well. And anything we see beyond the wall is usually pretty cool. Next up, we have a battle that was in some ways kind of pointless, but I liked it still. This was when Yara and some of the other Iron Islanders, whatever you say it, came to try to rescue Theon from the Dreadfort, and I enjoyed it. I don't think it was fantastic. It was just kind of pointless because they didn't even save Theon, so they just kind of left, and then they just never come back. So they tried, and that was it. And it made some impact on those characters later on in later seasons, but in the moment, it didn't really do much for the story. It didn't do much for the plot. It was just some extra action to throw in there, and I enjoyed it, but I'm just going to put it in C because, like I said, it doesn't really do much for the story. Next up, we have the Battle of Castle Black, or you can call it the Watchers on the Wall, which, I mean, that was the episode name. This is easily S tier. I don't even have to, think about it. Like, it's an easy S tier. This was easily one of the best battles in the show as well, alongside Blackwater. It was just, again, full episode, just like Blackwater. You pretty much had the entire episode spent with this battle, and it was just the Night's Watch just getting ready for the Wildlings to attack. They knew it was coming, and when they attack, it is intense. And it's like, you don't really understand how they're going to do it, because they're like, okay, there's a giant wall here. How are they going to get past? But oh, they really do try to get past. But the main threat was obviously Ygritte's group, that was coming on the other side of the wall. And it's just so cool how they're coming on one side and then they're also on the other side, and it's just back and forth, and just getting to see all the characters going from, you know, the wall back down to below at Castle Black, and just all the different fighting. And it's some of the best directing I've ever seen in a battle in anything. Like some of the shots with Ygritte running up to the castle, like, you know, shooting her bow and arrow. Like, it's so many amazing shots. There's some really good effects here too. They have stuff like the mammoths being used, which looked really cool. They had the giants, which also looked really cool. So it's one of the first times we actually get to see the giants in action. And like, it was like a movie. Like, this is genuinely one of those episodes that I would have loved to have seen in theaters, and I hope someday I get the chance to do that. Maybe they'll do it one day, I don't know. But that would just be amazing, because this is a movie-like episode, just like Blackwater. It definitely has that quality to it. And like I said, whole episode of just pure action. It's well lit. You can see what's going on. You can see it very well. And it ends in a very tragic death of Ygritte, which is very important for Jon's character. So story-wise, this episode's huge, especially with the conflict between Night's Watch and the Wildlings. It's really huge. And even just for the individual characters, even for Sam, it's pretty huge. Like, so many characters get a lot of development here. You just can't take this battle out of the story. You can't. And even just from an entertainer's perspective, it's definitely one of the most entertaining battles in the show. Next up, we have Hardhome. Now, oof, man, I was so pumped for this. The first battle against the White Walkers and their army, easily S tier as well. Like, this is just some of the best Game of Thrones stuff right here. Like, these three battles right here are peak Game of Thrones content. I mean, just seeing the White Walkers in the distance, just raising a whole army. It's not that long of a battle either. It's like maybe 10 to 15 minutes, but it is so incredible. Jon Snow killing a White Walker with his sword, his Valyrian steel sword, getting to see, you know, 1-1 fighting off the dead, and even just seeing those scenes of like kids just getting risen, and just, oh my god, it's such fucked up stuff, but it is so cool. This is the first time we really get to see the Night King in all his glory. Obviously, we've seen like little glimpses of him in prior episodes, but never in his just full force, and this is where he really is just absolutely terrifying. And it was a villain that I was really excited to see a lot more of in the future, and even to learn more of, which unfortunately didn't fully pan out the way I wanted it to. But just this episode in and of itself was just masterful stuff. I mean, the episode itself is like pretty solid, but like, it's really the battle that just makes it what it is. It's one of the, probably easily the best part of season 5, that's for sure. It is a horror movie brought to the show. Like, this is easily the most horrifying battle we've seen, and I loved it. The atmosphere, the snow, just all of it, incredible. And it's also really important for bringing Jon and the Wildlings together, for making that pact that lasts for later seasons. You need this battle to make that work, because after, you know, obviously having a battle against them in season 4, you needed to have a battle where he's working with them, or else that pact would not work. Next up, we have the Dance of Dragons, which was literally in the next episode. And this isn't really, again, this isn't like, it's hard to call this a battle, but you do have the Sons of the Heartbeat just attacking a bunch of people in the gladiator pit, and some of them fight back, and then of course Drogon comes in, saves the day, lights a bunch of them up with fire. Daenerys jumps on Drogon and escapes. It's a pretty great scene. I think the best part about it is just getting to see Daenerys, you know, riding a dragon for the first time. But the battle itself is not like the craziest thing ever. I'm not gonna put it that high. It's just gonna go and be, but it's still an amazing scene, and the implication it has for, you know, her bond with her dragon is definitely what makes this as good as it is. Now, unfortunately, we're gonna get our first D tier here, and this is Stannis attacking Winterfell. You know, of course, in season 5, episode 10, and this is of course where Stannis dies. And I'm gonna put it in D because I felt like it was a bit rushed. Like, I understood that was kind of the point. It was supposed to show that, you know, this is what Stannis, he really wants. He really wants to do what he's gonna do. He wants to take over Winterfell. He's gonna, you know, defeat the Boltons, do all that, and he rushes it. He completely rushes it. He does not take his time, because he just wants to get through with it. And that was his biggest flaw, is that he was just impatient. He was an impatient person. you know, it worked out fine for him with the Battle of King's Landing. Well, not really. He technically lost that battle, but regardless, he keeps doing that. He keeps just being impatient, and just that gets to the best of him. And it does in this battle where he ends up dead in the end. And I'm okay with Stannis dying. I am. I don't need this character to live forever. But the problem is, I feel like it should have just been better built up. And I also don't think this battle itself should have been so just thrown in there, and it was skipped over. It didn't really show much of the battle actually happening, but I decided to include it because I just wanted to put something in D, and I don't think I'm going to put a lot of these that low, so I needed to complain about something. We had to put something that low. Next up, we have when the White Walkers attacked the, I don't even know what you would call it, but the place where the Three-Eyed Raven was staying, and of course this was where Hodor died. And I think this was a really great sequence. This was one of the best sequences of season 6. Of course, there was a lot that it did for Bran's character, and then of course Hodor's death and just learning more about Hodor. I thought it was pretty incredible, and again, it was another sequence with the White Walkers, getting to see their army, getting to see how terrifying they could be. I'm gonna put it an A. I think it was incredible. Also seeing the children fighting, like with their different little abilities and powers, I thought that was really cool. I didn't include that little skirmish at the end of season 4 with, you know, Mira and Jojen and them fighting those whites in that moment. Just kind of include that with this same one though, because I didn't really put it, I didn't want it to be something separate. So just kind of just put these together. Just any skirmish against the White Walkers while they're in that place. Just either of those skirmishes, just put them together and it gets A tier, because both of them were pretty good equally. You know, I think it was a really great way to just end that overall story with Bran beyond the wall, and for them to finally just head their asses back to Winterfell. Next up, we have the Battle of Meereen. Now, the Battle of Meereen, I think, would have been a lot better if it was a bit longer. It was very, very short. It was probably like 5 minutes long, and it could have definitely been a bit longer than that. They could have dragged it out a little bit more, but I just think they wanted to be something short and sweet, and I don't think it was necessarily a bad thing. I just think, yeah, I would have preferred it was a little bit longer. I think it had potential to be an S tier battle, but unfortunately, I'm only going to put it in B. It was great seeing Daenerys using her dragons again. The music in this scene was phenomenal, but I'm struggling putting it higher than that, just based on the fact that it's just so short. It's so short, and there's not much to it. But it looks amazing. The special effects, some of the best we've seen in the franchise or in the series. So yeah, gotta put it there. And next up, of course, we have the Battle of the Bastards, also gonna go in S tier alongside these other 3 battles. I've heard a lot of criticisms for this battle over the past month of me watching YouTube videos on Game of Thrones ever since finishing the show, and I've been binging a lot of videos, and I've never really agreed with a lot of the criticisms for it though. I think a lot of the criticisms were kind of like, you know, I just don't agree. You know, people are like, oh, the battle tactics were off and all this stuff, but you could really make those criticisms about a lot of different battles. I don't expect these, you know, soldiers to always be so incredible with everything they do. I expect there to be some flaws in their plans and their designs. And I think in terms of just directing and choreography and all that, this is one of the best battles. I absolutely love, especially that one take scene is just so damn good. The music is incredible. The fact that it starts with Rickon's death, which was just brutal to see, and just how that affects Jon in this scene. And of course, Sansa sends in the aid of the Vale, the Knights of the Vale, and you have just a lot of great back and forth between these armies here. I think the way it starts is the best though, just seeing Jon charging them, and you know, all the arrows flying down, and then Davos is like, let's just go, let's charge, and they just start running down. It's amazing. Of course, 1-1 gets killed here as well, but he has a really cool scene just taking people out, and then it ends in Ramsay dying. So you can't not love this battle. It is fan-freaking-tastic. Had to put it in S tier along with those other 3 incredible battles. Next up, we have a battle that I don't really know what you would call it, but it's the battle where Euron and his ships attack Theon, Yara, and, you know, the Sand Snake. What were they called? The Sand Snakes. The daughters of Oberyn. So that actually was a really cool scene. I'm gonna put it in A. I'm gotta be honest, like that was one of my favorite episodes of season 7. But that battle itself at the very end of the episode, it was like a last minute thing. It was maybe like a 7-minute battle, something like that. But it was awesome. Like I wanted to see a battle with ships, just like a pirate type thing, or it's like back and forth between ships. And this was finally something that we got to see with that. And the way it starts with Euron just like bringing the thing down and jumping onto the other ship and just attacking people and just screaming. Like, Euron was never one of my favorite characters. I thought he was just kind of a meh villain in the later seasons, but this episode is where he really shined, and I thought he was really, really cool, and I was really excited to see more of that type of Euron. Don't really get to see that too much again, but he was awesome here. Just the way he jumps on there, and his fight with Yara is really cool. He takes out a couple of Oberyn's daughters as well, and it's really well directed stuff. Again, it's really well directed. It looks really great as well. The lighting, the way it's lit is so cool with the fire everywhere, because, you know, the ships are just getting destroyed like crazy. So yeah, it deserves A tier for me. I think this is an incredible, incredible battle. And now these next two battles were literally in the same episode, and each of them were like a minute long, and I don't even know if I can really count them. And the reason I'm gonna put both of them in D, although I did enjoy them, I enjoyed their inclusion, I enjoyed the story behind them, but I can't really say much good about them, because at the end of the day, they were just really rushed. Like, you could have had both of these be within like a full episode if you really wanted to, and they're pretty big, huge moments. So just the fact that they're both very rushed, I really don't think I could put them much higher than D. I just don't think I could. You know, it's unfortunate that they were so rushed, but ultimately, I did love the episode itself. Like, episode 3 of season 7 was definitely one of my favorites of that season, and I loved, you know, how it ended with Jaime, you know, killing Lady Olenna and all. It was just really great stuff that this episode had, but the battle itself was just smushed in this really quick sequence, and it's like, why would you do that? Battles used to have this, you know, really long running thing in this show. It was like a whole episode could be a battle, but for some reason it's like 2 minutes. I don't know. That was a little disappointing, but the overall art episode was fine. But I have to put him in D just for that. I have to. And next up, we have the Spoils of War, also going to go in S. I think this is the best battle in terms of visuals. Like, if we're talking purely visuals, how it looks, this is probably the best battle. Because, I mean, of course, it's season 7, it's much later in the show, so they've obviously gotten higher budget. Everything just looks so amazing. The just cinematography, everything is just wow. Whether or not you like how it works for the story is, you know, up to you, but I mean, this is the first time we get to see Daenerys just in Westeros, just taking people out with her dragon. And you can call her a little reckless with it here. I mean, obviously we see her way more reckless later on in season 8. But here, yes, she's destroying a lot of things that she probably shouldn't be, because they could probably use it for her own army. But I think it's just showing how much she just stopped caring. She stopped giving a shit. And I don't like what they did with that in season 8, because she went so far in that direction that she ended up just killing innocent civilians, and that to me was a bit much. But here it made a little more sense, her recklessness, and I think it kind of worked for what was going on in this scene. But again, it was one of those battles where you care about people on both sides. I don't want to see Jaime or Ron die. I don't want to see Daenerys die. But they're going directly against each other, and you know, Bronn's trying to use that giant crossbow to try to shoot down Drogon, and Daenerys is just not having it. And Jaime charging Daenerys at the end was probably one of the only things I didn't like about this battle, because I like him doing that, but you probably should have just killed him off there, or just not had him do it at all, because the whole like Bronn saving him last minute thing was kind of dumb. But in general, great battle. Like, everything else about it was just amazing. I mean, it was barely a battle. The Lannisters barely fought back, if we're being honest. Like, it was almost a slaughter in a lot of ways. Dothraki, and just how terrifying they were just charging through those fields, was just so amazing, because it was, again, one of those things. King Robert said it back in season 1, like, never meet Dothraki in an open field, right? That is what happened here. That is exactly what happened here, and it was just fucking amazing. Like, just wow. I could not get enough of this episode. When I first watched it, I remember, you guys remember my reaction. I was freaking out the whole episode, the whole final, you know, 10-15 minutes of it. So gotta put it here. It's definitely one of my favorite battles in the show. Then we have the Battle Beyond the Wall. That's what I'm gonna call it. So this was that episode where they went to go do that really stupid plan to get the White Walker, or I guess a white. But this battle is hard to rank, because I think the story surrounding it obviously is not very great. I think some of the just complete, I don't want to call it plot armor, because I hate that word, but there is a lot of that here with like Jon, you know, and just there are some moments like that I just don't really think work that well. They definitely could have done something else. But Of course, it has great visuals. Of course, it's really entertaining. Of course, it has that. So I'm gonna put it in C because yes, it's the story is definitely dragging it down. If it had a fantastic story behind it, it would probably be in like A or something. But the visuals is keeping it at a D. Just how great it looks, how entertaining it was. It has to keep it at a D for me because these battles weren't really that entertaining whatsoever. They were very quick, like I said, very rushed. But this one, at least, like, I was on my toes the whole time. I was loving it. I was cheering and all that. But it's just the story kind of drags it down. I can't put it much higher than that when I don't think the story was that strong for that battle. And we only have 2 battles left. Of course, we have the Long Night, or you can call it, I guess, the Battle for Winterfell, but I prefer calling it the Long Night. I think it makes more sense. This battle, I think, is where I disagree the most with the Game of Thrones community, because when I've been looking online, a lot of people did not like it. A lot of people hated it. I have a lot of issues with certain things. Obviously, you know, there's a couple moments where I feel like it definitely could have been better lit. Like it was hard to see. I don't think it was too dark necessarily, but there was definitely times where it was like too foggy almost. You just really couldn't see what was going on. There's a couple moments where characters are surrounded by whites, but they're somehow fine the next moment. But like stuff like that, you only really notice when you're like staring through it, like slowly looking through the battle. I did not notice it the first time I watched it. I did not at all. And that's a lot of battles and stuff and a lot of TV shows and movies I've seen where it's like, it's only bad if you really like take a small look at the little details, which most people are not going to do their first time watching it. You know what I mean? I might not even do it my second time watching and only did it because everyone told me about it. But in general, it didn't ruin my experience with this battle. I loved the battle. I did want to see the White Walkers last even longer than just this episode, but at the end of the day, I mean, the season was already as short as it is, so I didn't expect it to be that much longer. It was an hour-long battle, pretty much. The episode was like an hour, 20 minutes, and the battle was pretty much the whole episode, so it was a lot of battle stuff. And I thought it visually looked amazing when it wanted to. Obviously, like I said, a couple scenes here and there didn't look too great, but visually, 90% of the time, it looked amazing. I absolutely loved the music. I absolutely loved a lot of the character deaths and how they handled them. I have to put it in A. I have to. It's not an S. It would be an S if, you know, it fixed some of those problems I mentioned. But everything else to me deserves A. It just does. I'm sorry. Like, I loved that battle. Hate me for it. All you want. But I loved it. Seeing Arya just being an absolute badass and seeing, you know, Theon protecting Bran, seeing Jorah protecting Daenerys, you know, Beric saving Arya in that one scene, the whole fight with the dragons as well. Like, there's just a lot of great moments in this battle that deserve mentioning. So I had to put it in A. I had to. And then the one I'm gonna have to put in D just based on just my feelings for it, my experience with it, and that is The Last War. That what you call the battle? The Battle of King's Landing is probably a better word for it, but I think the episode, like, there's a soundtrack piece that they call it The Last War. That's what Daenerys call it, I think. I have to put it in D though. Like, visually, it did look amazing, and I know I said for this one, like, I put it in C because of that and the entertainment value, but this one hurt me more in terms of like the story for this one, like I said, wasn't very good, but it didn't piss me off. It didn't anger me. I wasn't like, oh, this is so stupid for the story. This one did though. Like, what they did with Daenerys' character there, I just did not like. I did not like what they did with that just really quick turn, and I think this could have been a really cool battle if they had that be fleshed out a little bit better. You did have the Hound versus, you know, the Mountain, but like that was just obviously, it was just kind of thrown in there. You don't really need that for his character to have a solid conclusion. I think that was like a very obvious way to end his character, but you didn't have to do that. So I don't know. I can't really put it much higher than that. So I think this is my list. This is my list. I think this is solid. You have 5 in S, and then the rest have 4 in each of them. I think that's pretty even, but those top 5, if I were to rank them between the tier, because I've not been doing that this whole time, I've just been throwing them in there. If I were to rank them between the S's here, that's really tough. That is incredibly, incredibly tough. So Battle of the Bastards is my favorite episode, but I don't know if that's my favorite battle, because there's other moments of the episode that I really love, which makes it my favorite, but the battle itself, do I want to put that as my favorite? It's definitely a contender. Watchers on the Wall would be up there as well. Hard Home would be probably around there. Black Water would be there maybe. Spoils of War right there. That seems about all right. Honestly, it's really hard to rank them in between the tiers. It really is. You could put them probably anywhere. I'd be fine with it. So let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. What are your favorite battles in the show? What are your least favorite battles? I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. I will see you all in my next one. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Peace out.